Welcome back to the Now Morning Show, guys, where it might be July, but we're already thinking ahead for the September semester. We are talking transitioning into secondary school in our Spotlight on Now.
This morning, to help us discuss the transition from primary to secondary school, I welcome Dr. Asha Pemberton, paediatrician and adolescent specialist. Good morning to you, Dr. Pemberton.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
So far, so good. How are you doing this morning? Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm pretty good this morning.
All right. So we're talking the transition from primary school to secondary school. Tell me, from where you sit, what are some of the concerns that parents and students tend to have in that transition?
I think starting with parents, one of the biggest, I would say, challenges or areas that they need to navigate is recognizing that their transition or their secondary school experience will naturally be that much different to their children. And so one of the biggest shocks for families come September, October, with that parents build these expectations of what the school will be like, particularly if they went to that school themselves, and then a young person gets there and realizes, oh, we're not all having picnics at lunchtime on the greens. Everybody eats in the classroom or something like that. And so I think it's really all about expectations and reality, and being sure not to create expectations which may not fit the culture of today. So from a parental end, that is a big factor to consider as they start having these conversations with their children right now.
And from your children's end?
Right. And from the perspective of a young person, so we're talking about an 11, 12-year-old who's coming from being the oldest, the strongest, the tallest in their primary school setting to being literally a little fish in a big pond. And so that transition from that position of authority and seniority and popularity to being oftentimes a virtual unknown can be frightening. Recognizing that you are often, not always, in a much larger school setting, but even in smaller settings, it can be quite intimidating. And then navigating varieties of cultures of other children. So you really come into a space where you're meeting people from different backgrounds, different systems of values, and it can be quite daunting to navigate altogether.
Yeah, now there are lots of layers involved here, right, Doc? So let's go with, from the parents' perspective, I think that one is fairly easy in terms of managing expectations, right? Based on what we spoke about just now. Manage your expectations and realize that this is a different time, so support the children. But from the children's perspective, what sort of support do they need to be able to be mentally prepared for that journey?
I think that journey starts right now with preparing them in developing some more self-management skills. So primary school environments are, as they should be, a lot more supportive in terms of the educator-student dynamic and balance. In secondary school, there is that expectation that you manage yourself, you manage your time, you manage your resources, you manage your skills. And so this does not happen magically when you start secondary school. It is a process of development, as in adolescence is a process of development. So little things that parents can do with their preteens or tweens, even this holiday period for the next 2 months, within their home environment is to rely upon them to manage themselves more, their self-care, their personal hygiene, packing their things away, little things like that, which to some parents might seem intuitive. For many young people in 2025, those skills are not, that they really have to be taught and groomed and honed. So that is a self-management space. And then the other big one I would say for young people is to learn to communicate. Our adolescents, our children are digital natives. They have grown up in a world where social media, online communication is part of the fabric of their lives, and it's here to stay. But you still need to be able to communicate human to human in person. And a lot of children find that extremely intimidating for a variety of reasons, which is a whole other segment. But they still have to learn these skills because they have to go into a classroom setting of other children, most of whom will be new to them, and start to build connections. And so any opportunity that parents can find over the coming weeks, 2 months, to get your children immersed into spaces where they have to speak to other people, they have to communicate, they have to learn the nuance of body language, they have to understand how to navigate conflict. All of these skills will serve them well come September.
Self-management, communication, and navigating conflict. Those are some of the tips that you're recommending that we do to get them ready, right? But in terms
Yes.
of how do we get them ready using those tools? So putting them in vacation camps, putting them in what sort of situations do we put them in to be able to test that, to be able to build that level of resilience when it comes to communication and self-management?
Beautiful. So you mentioned one. So starting out of the home then. So camps, faith-based activities. So really we have to thrust them into new scenarios because the transition to secondary school really at its core is stepping into the unknown, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to create other settings where they're stepping into different spaces. And so camps, groups, activities, just anything out of the box where they're not only surrounded by their intimate core of friends will force them to interact and to develop these skills in a smaller, more controlled way. I think the biggest challenge when you transition to secondary school is that there is that loss of control by parent and by young person, but you have to press on and go to school, right? And so the more simulation you can do in a control setting to navigate those anxieties, have that communication so they can explain how they are feeling, and then you guide them are key. Now, in the home setting, as far as self-management, it is vacation time, but there is still need for some structure. And parents are called upon to supervise their children and not just have them on devices all day long, to help them, for example, manage their rooms, clean up after themselves, give them small tasks. I'm not saying that they need to be like the military for July and August, but the only way you can assess whether they can keep their things tidy, you give them an instruction in the morning and come back in the afternoon and make sure it's done, is that you have to be supervising because the secondary school environment is going to require that. You're given an assignment today, it's due Friday, no one's checking in to see if you've done it. They just want it on Friday. So again, that skill has to be honed day by day in a home environment in small ways. Water plants, feed dogs, the list is endless, but having that organization to do it and the tenacity to follow up, those are critical.
Most definitely. Now, coming out of SEA, it would have been a fairly stressful time for most of the students. They would have buckled down, they would have done a lot of the hard work, they would have been revising, studying, making sure that everything is good to do the exam, and then they would have had a couple months of downtime, relaxing. Is it that the stress should be back on now that we're getting ready for secondary school? Because it sounds very daunting to enter this new experience where you are now the littlest possible fish, as you mentioned, in the big pond. So should we be concerning them with more stress, or should we tell them, yeah, this is just what life gonna be, just stress after stress?
I would say structure, not stress, right? So stress by definition is something that overwhelms and sort of encumbers upon your peace, whereas
Right.
I'm more suggesting structure to teach them skills. And, skill development requires some measure of learning, some measure of exposure with the hope of having an outcome. So that sounds very sciencey, but it's just to say they do need downtime. This is a vacation period. No matter what the outcome, they are all going to transition. They all have a picture of what these schools are going to look like, and invariably most of them are going to be wrong, right? So it is still stepping into the unknown, it's still transition, but in preparation for that, there should be some structure which can be built into daily life in a light, humorous way, but still these skills have to be developed. And over the years, working with young people, those who have those skills generally fare better in that transition as compared to those who do not. And even if they don't in September, doesn't mean it's never going to happen. It's just that we want to eliminate some of that entering anxiety that tends to happen when they feel they're sort of floundering in this new environment.
Of course. Should there be academic prep as well? Because, in some cases, you'll be going to start doing subjects you've never even thought about doing before. I don't know, maybe the Spanish or whatever else that they might be adding to the curriculum that you weren't doing before in primary school. Should they be starting to prep for those subjects during this vacation?
Well, that is something that your high-yield competitive parent wants to do. But I really don't know that that is necessary outside of those young people whom have varying learning differences, those who have autism or neurodivergent. So there is certainly going to be a subsection of young people who, for a variety of medical or learning or psychological or other mental health concerns, will require extra preparation going into secondary school. But that's a little bit different from starting to learn Spanish ahead of time. I really don't know that level of competition is required. But I mean, I'm laughing about it, but some parents will do that, always that push to get ahead. But I'm a strong believer that we all need rest and we all need downtime and we all need to reset, which is why, as we were saying before, it's not that this is a summer of stress. It is a summer of structure whilst they are relaxing and enjoying these moments before their next step. I mean, listen, they have the rest of their lives to be stressed, let's be honest, right? So I see no need to push it any further. And I don't advocate for that anywhere in my practice. They need to have fun and be children, do social activities, do all of the things, right? Mm-hmm. You're only going to be 11, 12, 13 once.
Now, Doc, what advice would you give to those parents and students who may not have gotten into the schools that they would have wanted to get into, those who put down a list of schools and they didn't get any of them, and they may have been feeling disappointed? They kind of reluctantly saying, well, we'll go to the school and see how it goes. What advice would you give to those, both parents and students?
That this is not a life-defining moment. This is just one step in the journey, and that none of us truly is in control of our future. So this may not be the first image, what you thought you wanted, but we really don't know what lies ahead. And I can share with you from my many years of experience, even many young people who go to the school of their choice get in there, and again, not quite what I expected. And many of them later on still want to transition and move on. And we see a lot of that these days. So start where you are, do what you can with what you have, enter into this space with an open mind, using all of the opportunities around you. And invariably you will find with that sort of mindset, your educational experience continues in a positive way. So we can't go back, we can't change anything, but we can control how we go forward into our new environment.
Yes, most definitely. And for the parents, should they be supporting regardless? Or should they be, how should the parents be treating the same situation?
The parents need to be that ever presence of support and guidance. And so there is a new parenting term called Lighthouse Parenting. So as a parent, imagine yourself as being a lighthouse on a cliff's edge. Your child is that little sailboat trying to navigate their way into shore. They have to navigate the rough waters and the high winds, but you need to be that steady, constant beam of light and guidance to guide them into the shore. I love that analogy and that metaphor, right? And so in that same way, parents are to be that support, again, to provide them the additional opportunities. So let us just say the school that we're going to may not have this fantastic cricket team and you're an avid cricketer, we can outsource cricketing somewhere else, as an example. So we just want to provide support, guide, supply as best you can anything additional that your child might need. But again, go forth into this next setting with as many skills as you can to use the most of the opportunities that are in front of you.
Dr. Pemberton, thank you so much for your time this morning. Thank you for joining us and contributing to this conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
You as well. Take care. That's Dr. Asha Pemberton, paediatrician and adolescent specialist, just sharing with us some tips to get ready as the students who were in primary school get ready to transition into secondary school. We take a quick break. We come back with more. Stay tuned.
Good spirits, I drink in a good spirits. We vibes in cars in a